Hey everyone, my name is Shane Robinson. I am focusing our discussion post for week 6. This is our kinesiology 7830 class, and our topic this week is going over explaining our limitations based off of our study design and how we were best able to minimize those limitations within our study design that was proposed in our prospectus and that we're working on our oral defense. For me, my study design is a randomized control trial with 3 arms, and just kind of more of a back overview of the context from what I've been talking about the past few weeks. It is investigating optimal intensity resistance training to best benefit the exercise tolerance and symptoms with peripheral arterial disease. So for this, since I'm not doing an observational study, I'm able to be a little bit more strict with my inclusion-exclusion criteria just to make sure that I don't have a ton of variables or comorbidities that might be underlying that might need to be excluded. So I'm able to actually exclude within my inclusion criteria. But for the literature, what I did was I made sure with some of the literature out there that shows certain gender differences or age differences, or how extreme the PAD and how severe PAD diagnosis is in these patients were controlled for my randomization. So I'm having a controlled randomized allocation process for my 3 groups of a low, moderate, and heavy intensity resistance training group. But I'm controlling for gender just because in the literature it shows that since I'm evaluating muscle oxygen saturation and the ability to complete repetitions at various intensities, that there are differences between genders. And then I am not controlling in that randomization process for the severity of peripheral arterial disease. What I decided to do to make this a little bit easier on me and for my recruitment is to focus on symptomatic peripheral arterial disease that have a severity of a mild to moderate form of PAD. So that is defined with the ankle brachial index pressure of 0.6 to 0.8 millimeters of mercury. For that, it is a smaller gap, but one of the reasons why I wanted that is so we can actually have symptomatic PAD participants and we're not having to worry about a large variation in the severity of PAD to see how that can affect the amount of volume and progressions that individuals are able to do outside of our main independent variable, which is the various intensities of resistance training. For that, when it comes to the validity of my findings and determining the trustworthiness, I know last week we talked about statistical tests that we were doing since I have 3 groups and all my outcome measures are continuous parametric variables. I am doing an ANOVA test, but what I will also do too is looking at a multinomial logistic regression model. A linear regression model to make sure that I have evaluated and identified any potential co-founders that might be influencing the outcome variables I have with that linear regression model. And based off of that, if there are any significant co-founders, I will end up doing a analysis of covariance instead of an analysis of variance. So doing a ANCOVA analysis for that. So that is how I am best minimizing the primary limitations I have based off of recruitment, just based off of the study design. One of the other things I was thinking about that I also had to discuss with my committee for my defense was I'm doing a 8-week intervention, but then it's 10 weeks total because I have a pre-assessment and post-assessment week outside of the 8-week intervention and looking at dropout rates and what I can do about that. So one of the things I'm doing for my outcome variable is a low incremental cycling test to measure the time in seconds to the onset of claudication and the total time to exhaustion in the test. And instead of only doing it in the pre and post, I'm also adding it to the 5th week of the 8-week intervention. So to be able to do an assessment period after the 5 weeks, didn't want to do it any earlier because the first few weeks are really more neuromuscular adaptations. And then more of the anatomical and metabolic adaptations actually start happening about 4 to 6 weeks in. So doing that 5-week period gives me enough time where it shouldn't be too long in case I do have some dropouts throughout the intervention phase, but then it gives them long enough time to actually hit the adaptations of a cardiometabolic adaptation that we're looking for with the intervention. So those are some ways that I'm trying to best minimize limitations. I know we all have limitations, all studies we're doing, but the key is how do we best minimize them so we have valid and trustworthy results. So that were my strategies based off those limitations.